Paris, 1789. France, the most powerful kingdom in Europe, stands on the edge of collapse. King Louis XVI rules from his golden palace at Versailles, but his treasury is empty, his people are starving, and revolutionary ideas are spreading like wildfire through the streets of Paris. Within weeks, the old order will be swept away in a tide of blood and violence that will reshape not just France, but the entire world. The storm that is about to break has been building for decades. France's involvement in the American Revolutionary War has bankrupted the nation. The royal court at Versailles continues to spend lavishly while peasants in the countryside struggle to afford bread. The winter of 1788-89 is brutally cold, destroying crops and pushing food prices to unprecedented heights. In Paris, a loaf of bread costs nearly a day's wages for a working man. But it is not just hunger that fuels discontent. New ideas are circulating. Enlightenment philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu have questioned the divine right of kings and championed individual liberty, reason, and equality. Their writings, though banned by royal censors, are read in secret by an increasingly literate middle class, the bourgeoisie. These merchants, lawyers, and professionals resent the privileges enjoyed by the nobility and clergy, who pay little or no taxes while controlling most of France's wealth and land. France's social structure, known as the Ancien Regime, divides society into three estates. The first estate, the clergy, numbers about 130,000 and owns roughly 10% of France's land. The second estate, the nobility, consists of perhaps 400,000 people who own another 25% of the land and hold virtually all important positions in government, the military, and the church. The third estate includes everyone else, about 27 million people, from wealthy bankers to destitute peasants. They bear almost the entire tax burden, yet have virtually no political power. By 1789, the financial crisis has become so severe that Louis XVI can no longer govern without raising taxes. But to do so, he must call a meeting of the Estates General, an assembly of representatives from all three estates that has not met since 1614. It is a revolutionary act. For the first time, representatives of the common people are defying the absolute authority of the king. Louis XVI begins concentrating troops around Paris and Versailles. Parisians fear a military crackdown. When the king dismisses his popular finance minister, Jacques Necker, on July 11th, riots break out across the capital. Armed mobs attack customs posts and weapons depots. The city descends into chaos. On the morning of July 14, 1789, a crowd of several thousand Parisians marches to the Bastille, an imposing medieval fortress in eastern Paris. Though it holds only 7 prisoners, the Bastille is a hated symbol of royal tyranny. The crowd demands weapons and ammunition stored there. When negotiations fail, they storm the fortress. After 4 hours of fighting that leaves nearly 100 attackers dead, the garrison surrenders. The governor of the Bastille, Bernard-René Delaunay, is dragged into the street by the mob. Despite promises of safe conduct, he is beaten, stabbed repeatedly, and beheaded. His head is mounted on a pike and paraded through the streets of Paris. It is the first of many such brutal public murders that will characterize the revolution. The fall of the Bastille sends shockwaves across France. In the countryside, peasants rise up against their feudal lords, burning chateaux and destroying the documents that record their obligations. This period of rural unrest, known as the Great Fear, spreads panic among the nobility. Many flee abroad, becoming émigrés who will plot counter-revolution from exile. On August 4th, in an extraordinary night session, the National Assembly abolishes feudalism. Nobles renounce their ancient privileges. The tithe to the church is eliminated. All citizens are declared equal before the law. 3 weeks later, the Assembly adopts the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, proclaiming that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. It is one of the great documents of human liberty, inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, but going further in its egalitarian vision. Yet the royal family remains at Versailles, increasingly isolated and mistrusted. In October, thousands of market women, angry over bread shortages, march from Paris to Versailles. They are soon joined by armed National Guardsmen. The crowd invades the palace, kills several guards, and nearly reaches the Queen's bedchambers. Marie Antoinette, Austrian-born and deeply unpopular, is blamed for France's troubles. Though she never said, "Let them eat cake," the phrase captures how the people view her callous indifference to their suffering. Under pressure from the mob, Louis XVI agrees to return to Paris with his family. They are brought back to the Tuileries Palace as virtual prisoners. The king may still wear his crown, but real power now lies with the National Assembly and the increasingly radical political clubs of Paris, particularly the Jacobins. Over the next 2 years, the National Assembly works to create a constitutional monarchy. The church is brought under state control with the civil constitution of the clergy, requiring priests to swear loyalty to the nation rather than the pope. Church lands are seized and sold to help pay off the national debt. France is reorganized into departments with standardized laws and administration. A new flag, the tricolor of blue, white, and red, becomes the symbol of the nation. But the revolution is becoming more radical and violent. The political clubs, especially the Jacobins, led by Maximilien Robespierre, push for more extreme measures. They see enemies everywhere, in the aristocracy, the church, even among moderate revolutionaries. Trust erodes, replaced with paranoia and suspicion. In June 1991, Louis XVI and his family attempt to escape from Paris in disguise, hoping to reach the Austrian Netherlands where émigré nobles and foreign armies are gathering. But they are recognized and stopped at Varennes, just 30 miles from the border. Their attempted flight destroyed whatever remaining trust the French people had in their king. He is no longer seen as a reluctant supporter of reform, but as a traitor, plotting with foreign powers to crush the revolution. The situation grows more dangerous as European monarchs, alarmed by events in France and worried that revolutionary ideas might spread to their own countries, begin threatening intervention. In April 1792, France declares war on Austria. Prussia joins Austria soon after. French armies, poorly equipped and led by officers who have fled abroad, suffer early defeats. As foreign armies advance toward Paris, radical revolutionaries seize control. On August 10, 1792, a massive crowd storms the Tuileries Palace. The king's Swiss guards fight desperately to defend the royal family, but they are overwhelmed and massacred. The king and his family flee to the National Assembly for protection, but Louis XVI is suspended from his duties. The constitutional monarchy is finished. A new governing body, the National Convention, is elected by universal male suffrage. Its first act is to abolish the monarchy and declare France a republic. It is September 21st, year 1 of the new revolutionary calendar that will date all events from this moment. The old Christian calendar, with its saints' days and religious festivals, is swept away, replaced by a rational system of 10-day weeks and months named after seasons and weather. The fate of Louis XVI dominates debate. Some argue for exile, others for imprisonment, but the radical Jacobins, led by Robespierre, insist that the king must die for the revolution to live. In December 1792, Louis put on trial before the convention, charged with conspiring against public liberty and the general security of the state. The evidence includes his secret correspondence with foreign powers and his attempted flight to Varennes. The vote is close, but on January 17, 1793, the convention condemned Louis XVI to death by a margin of just 1 vote. 4 days later, he's executed by guillotine in the Place de la Révolution, now the Place de la Concorde. As the blade falls, cutting through his neck in seconds, some in the crowd rush forward to dip handkerchiefs in the royal blood. 1,000 years of monarchy has ended in an instant. The execution of Louis XVI horrifies the monarchies of Europe. Britain, Spain, and the Netherlands join Austria and Prussia in the first coalition against France. French armies face enemies on all fronts. Inside France, a royalist uprising erupts in the Vendée region of western France. Catholic peasants, loyal to the king and church, rise up against revolutionary authorities. The Vendée War will become one of the bloodiest episodes of the revolution, with perhaps 200,000 deaths. Revolutionary forces crushed the rebellion with systematic brutality, burning villages and executing prisoners en masse. In Paris, food shortages and inflation fuel popular anger. The sans-culottes, the radical working-class militants named for the rejection of aristocratic knee breeches in favor of long trousers, demand price controls and more vigorous action against enemies of the revolution. In June 1793, armed sans-culottes surround the National Convention and force the arrest of the Girondins, moderate Republicans who have opposed radical measures. Power passes to the Jacobins and their allies in the Paris Commune. To deal with the military crisis and internal enemies, the convention creates the Committee of Public Safety, a 12-man executive body with virtually unlimited powers. Its dominant figure is Maximilien Robespierre, a 35-year-old lawyer from Arras known as the Incorruptible for his moral rigidity and ascetic lifestyle. Robespierre and his allies believe that in times of crisis, revolutionary virtue must be defended by terror. The law of suspects, passed in September 1793, allows the arrest of anyone deemed an enemy of the revolution, based on the vaguest evidence or mere suspicion. Revolutionary tribunals are established to try these suspects in proceedings that are little more than show trials. There is no right of appeal. Guilty verdicts lead to immediate execution by guillotine. Thus begins the Reign of Terror, the darkest chapter of the French Revolution. The guillotine, invented as a humane method of execution, becomes an instrument of mass killing. At the height of the terror, the blade falls on dozens of victims each day. They are brought to the scaffold in open carts, surrounded by jeering crowds. Some go to their deaths with dignity, others weeping and pleading for mercy that never comes. The victims include people from all walks of life. Marie Antoinette, the former queen, is executed in October 1793, condemned for treason and the vague charge of corrupting her own son. Her final journey to the guillotine is marked by stoic courage. Philippe Égalité, the Duke of Orleans, who had voted for the king's death and taken a republican name, is himself executed when he falls under suspicion. 21 Girondin deputies are guillotined together. Georges Danton, one of the revolution's great early leaders, is sent to his death when he urges moderation and an end to the terror. "Show my head to the people," he tells the executioner. "It is worth seeing." Even allies of Robespierre are not safe. Jacques Hébert, leader of the extreme sans-culottes, is executed when he pushes for measures too radical even for the Jacobins. The revolution, and Robespierre's famous phrase, has begun to devour its own children. Friendship, past service, revolutionary credentials, none of these guarantee safety. One careless word, one gesture of sympathy for the condemned can bring arrest and death. The terror claims perhaps 40,000 lives across France. About 15,000 die by guillotine, the rest by mass drownings, shootings, or disease in overcrowded prisons. In Nantes, revolutionary officials tie prisoners to barges and sink them in the Loire River. In Lyon, which resisted Jacobin rule, mass executions by cannon fire are carried out. The city is renamed Ville-Affranchie, Liberated City, and ordered partly demolished as punishment. Churches are closed and Christianity attacked as superstition. A new cult of reason replaces traditional religion with festivals celebrating revolutionary ideals, held in the former Notre Dame Cathedral, now renamed the Temple of Reason. Robespierre, uncomfortable with atheism, tries to establish his own cult of the Supreme Being, but it wins little popular support. Yet even as the terror rages, French armies are turning the tide against foreign invaders. The Levée en Masse, a mass conscription decree, puts hundreds of thousands of men under arms. Young officers like Napoleon Bonaparte rise rapidly through the ranks. Revolutionary fervor and new tactics based on speed and aggression bring victories. By early 1794, France's borders are secure and foreign armies are retreating. With the military crisis easing, many begin questioning the need for continued terror. But Robespierre insists that virtue without terror is powerless, that the revolution must be defended against its enemies at home. In June 1794, the law of 22 Prial streamlines the Revolutionary Tribunal, removing even the pretense of due process. The pace of executions accelerates. In Paris alone, 1,400 people are guillotined in 6 weeks. But Robespierre has made too many enemies. Other members of the Committee of Public Safety fear they will be his next victims. In the convention, a coalition of former terrorists and moderates unite against him. On 9th Thermidor, Year 2, July 27, 1794, Robespierre is shouted down when he tries to speak. The convention votes for his arrest along with his closest allies. That night, Robespierre and his supporters try to organize an insurrection, but few answer the call. The Paris sections, once so radical, are exhausted by violence and terror. When soldiers arrive to arrest Robespierre, he tries to shoot himself, but only shatters his jaw. The next day, his head still wrapped in bloody bandages, he is guillotined along with 21 associates. Over the following days, 87 more Robespierrists go to the scaffold. The Thermidorian reaction, as this period is called, brings a relaxation of revolutionary fervor. The Revolutionary Tribunal is reformed, political prisoners are released, and the power of the Jacobins is broken. The Paris clubs are closed. Surviving Girondins return to the convention. There is a cultural reaction too, with fashionable society embracing frivolity and pleasure after years of revolutionary austerity and fear. But the new government, called the Directory after the five-man executive that leads it, proves weak and corrupt. France has experimented with constitutional monarchy, radical democracy, and revolutionary dictatorship. None has brought stability or prosperity. The economy remains in chaos. The assignats, paper currency issued by the revolutionary government and backed by confiscated church lands, have become almost worthless. Inflation is rampant. The Directory survives through a combination of force and political manipulation. When Royalists win elections in 1797, the results are annulled by military force in the coup of 18 Fructidor. The following year, when Jacobins make gains, another coup purges them from power. Democracy has given way to a corrupt oligarchy that maintains power through the army. That army, meanwhile, has become France's most successful institution. Young generals lead French forces to victory after victory. The most brilliant of these is Napoleon Bonaparte, a Corsican artillery officer who has risen through talent and audacity. In 1796–97, his Italian campaign brings stunning victories over Austria and establishes French control over much of Italy. He returns to France as a national hero. In 1798, Napoleon leads an expedition to Egypt, hoping to threaten British interests in the East. Though his fleet is destroyed by Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile, Napoleon wins impressive victories on land and brings scientists who make important archaeological discoveries, including the Rosetta Stone. When he learns that France faces a new coalition of enemies and that the Directory's authority is crumbling, he abandons his army and rushes back to Paris. He arrives in October 1799 to find France in crisis once again. The Directory is more unpopular than ever, taxes are not being collected, and brigands control many roads. Some deputies plot to restore the monarchy, while others want to revive Jacobin radicalism. The country desperately needs strong leadership. Napoleon is approached by plotters including Emmanuel Sieyès, one of the directors, and his own brother, Lucien, president of the lower house of the legislature. They need a general with prestige and troops. Napoleon needs political backing. Together, they plan a coup d'etat. On 18 Brumaire, year 8th, November 9th, 1799, Napoleon leads troops into the legislative chambers, ostensibly to protect the deputies from a Jacobin plot. The manufactured crisis allows the conspirators to dissolve the Directory and establish a new government called the Consulate. Napoleon, at age 30, becomes first consul, with near-dictatorial powers. The other two consuls are figureheads. The French Revolution, which began with idealistic calls for liberty, equality, and fraternity, ends with military dictatorship. The old royal despotism has been replaced by something new but equally authoritarian. Yet France has been transformed. Feudalism is abolished, the power of the church broken, and equality before the law established. The revolution's ideals of popular sovereignty and individual rights will inspire movements around the world for centuries to come. Napoleon quickly consolidates power. He reaches peace agreements with Austria and Britain, bringing to an end the decade of revolutionary wars. At home, he balances revolutionary achievements with conservative social control. His Concordat of 1801 reconciles France with the Catholic Church while keeping it under state control. His Civil Code, promulgated in 1804, preserves revolutionary reforms like legal equality and secular law while reinforcing patriarchal authority in the family. In 1804, Napoleon crowns himself Emperor of the French. The son of a minor Corsican nobleman who entered France as a foreigner speaking accented French, has made himself master of Europe's most populous nation. The revolution that abolished monarchy has produced an emperor more powerful than Louis XVI ever was. Yet Napoleon presents himself as the defender of the revolution's gains, spreading the civil code and revolutionary ideals across a Europe his armies will dominate for another decade.
The French Revolution remains one of history's most debated events. Was it a great leap forward for human liberty or a descent into chaos and bloodshed? The answer depends on perspective. For the aristocrats who lost their heads, their lands, and their world, it was an unmitigated disaster. For the millions of peasants freed from feudal obligations, it was liberation. For Europe's monarchs, it was a terrifying demonstration of what happens when the masses are empowered. For Democrats and revolutionaries of later generations, it became an inspiration and a warning about revolution's promises and perils. What cannot be disputed is the revolution's profound impact. It destroyed the Ancien Regime not just in France, but across Europe. It established principles of popular sovereignty and human rights that would shape the modern world. It demonstrated that ordinary people could overthrow kings and remake society according to rational principles. But it also revealed the dangers of revolutionary violence, the ease with which idealism can become fanaticism, and how quickly liberty can give way to tyranny. The French Revolution was France's crucible, a decade of violence and transformation that forged a new nation and a new era. From the fall of the Bastille to Napoleon's coup, France experienced more change than in the previous 1,000 years. Kings, constitutions, republics, terror, war, glory, and catastrophe followed in a dizzying succession. And through it all, the people of France, from peasants to philosophers, from sans-culottes to soldiers, shaped not just their own destiny, but that of the entire world. The revolution that began in 1789 with crowds storming a medieval fortress ended in 1799 with a brilliant general seizing power. The wheel had turned full circle from absolute monarchy to another form of absolute rule. Yet nothing was the same. The old world of kings, nobles, and priests could never be restored. A new age had begun, one in which the rights of man and the sovereignty of the people, however often violated, would remain powerful and dangerous ideas that no force could permanently suppress.